Welcome everyone to First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. This is our weekly Pau Hana. I'm Reverend TJ Fitzgerald. My pronouns are he, him, and his, but they pronouns are fine with me if that's your choice. And this is a time every week where we get together, learn a little bit about what's going on in the community, what's going on perhaps in our own little community, in our wider community. And today is one of our special days where we're learning more about what's going on in the wider community with one of our justice partners and longtime friends, Ikaika Hussey. So welcome, Ikaika, to Pau Hana. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I should have brought a beverage for Pau Hana.
Oh, well, yeah, I think Dave has some wine he was sharing with some people before.
Oh, there you go. Good.
I've just got limoncello LaCroix. I don't know why, but
I might holler for one of my kids to get me a glass of water, but that's...
Go ahead. I mean, now's the time. But we often open with a question of who you are, or who are you and what do you do, for the folks that maybe don't know you or know what you do. So who are you and what do you do?
Okay, my name is Ikaika Hussey. I live in Kalihi Valley. And let's see, I am an organizer with Unite Here Local 5, which is the Hotel Workers Union. And at the union, my kuleana is the workers at the Ala Moana Hotel. And I'm also on the political community team, which deals with politics. Our general goal is to try to sort of elevate worker issues and worker voices. And so that's a big chunk of what I do. I also have the honor and privilege of being the president of Faith Action for Community Equity, or Faith Action as it's now known, which is it's a 25-year-old coalition of churches and a couple of other organizations, including Local 5, the union that I'm with. So I have that hat as well, which intersects really nicely because it's an opportunity for me to kind of take the things that I learned growing up as a Catholic and put it into action, which is really the best way of being spiritual. And the other hat that I have is, I guess, as a parent, as a dad. I have 3 kids, and it's because I have 3 kids, ages 15 to 7, that that really is what drives a lot of my desire to make the world a better place. I'm a person with a lot of anxiety around climate, and so in the last couple of years, I've devoted a lot of my time towards trying to make a dent on the climate issue. And so I have a 3rd hat, or maybe it's a 4th hat at this point, which is I'm organizing a social enterprise around climate repair and carbon sequestration, that kind of stuff here in Hawaii. So that's another hat that I wear from time to time. So it's really an honor to be here with all of you. I'm
trying to change our name, but I don't know.
That's great. I'm gonna just mute you, David, if that's all right. That's a lot of hats. I mean, that's just 3 heads. I mean, well, really 4. That's really 4 you named. So when you said you want to make the world a better place, that always kind of perks my my ears up. When did that start for you? When did the pull or the call to try to help the world come to you, do you think?
It's going to be a lot of dead silence in your YouTube video. I'm sorry about that, Reverend TJ.
No, that's all right. I'll edit it right out.
I have a really clear memory of being a kid, like a 6-year-old, sitting in my mom's car, and we were driving out of the Safeway parking lot in Kaneohe, where I grew up, and someone knocked on the window. And it was an older man, and he was asking my mom for food. And I was really struck by what she did, which is she rolled down the window and handed him food right out of her shopping bag without asking, without saying anything. It's just like here's what I have. This is for you. And that act of personal generosity, I think is really what it's emblematic of what we should all be doing. But what the transition, though, is how do we go from personal action to social action, to public action? And This is another experience that I have growing up as a Catholic, is that I was confirmed in the Catholic Church, and there was a retreat that our church held in Kalihi Valley, actually just up the road from where I live now, at St. Anthony's Retreat Home. And I was maybe at this point 15 or 16 years old, so a little bit older. And around that age, people start to develop their political ideals, right? And we were watching a video about poverty in the global South. And I can't remember the specific story that the video was sharing, but it was a community that was dealing with extreme poverty and inequality. And there was a clear antagonist. It was a company that had moved in and was, disrupting their economy, disrupting their way of life. And it was a very moving video. But what I've always, what really affected me was the conversation afterwards, in which the adult leader of the church was talking about how, based on what you all saw in this video, what should you do? And what he was telling us was, we should go and pray. And I remember thinking, no, we got to go deal with that corporation that just took these guys' water or whatever, their land. There's a clear antagonist. So why don't we confront the antagonist? And to me, that's the critical thing, is how to translate the ideals that we have, the feelings that we feel, and how to translate that into an actionable, something that we can go do, hopefully not just individually, but as a group, because we are all stronger if we work together. And so that's why I love unions, I love cooperatives, and, any opportunity for us to get together, churches, absolutely. The collectivity that you all share on a Zoom call even is really wonderful. It's so much better than going through the world, this really difficult world, as individuals, right?
Have you ever heard the sort of apocryphal quote attributed to Saint Francis? Pray with all your heart. If necessary, use words. Yeah, I mean, it's something a little more poetic, but the suggestion that action is really at the heart of spirituality. So you've mentioned twice your upbringing, your faith, and there's an ethic somewhere that started in the 80s that somehow politics and religion should be separate or something like that. Can you say something about how your faith still operates? I mean, you've said some about it already, but how your faith operates in how you see faith and politics working together.
I want to do it by I'm going to use an analogy.
Great.
Do you all know Frank DeLima? Do you know Frank DeLima? He's a comedian, and he happens to be an old family friend of my parents. Frank and my dad went to high school together at Damien, and Frank and my dad were both in seminary. They both didn't finish seminary for various reasons. One of my dad's reason was because he met my mom. I don't know what Frank's excuse was. Thank you, honey. But Frank has talked about, his professional life now is he gives presentations to school kids, and he shares his comedy, but it's about kind of bringing a little bit of levity and happiness to school children. And he talks about that as the way that he kind of lives out his faith. And I don't know if I hope I'm not oversharing someone else's story, but I've always thought that was a neat way of thinking about, the way to live. His way of sharing the deepest part of him is by just making people laugh a little bit. And for me, the way that I do it is through politics. It's because I think that this is the way that that I can most deeply engage with the kind of world that I would like to see, and that I think that we get from our values. Yeah. So
right now, you're someone who puts pressure on politicians who are elected to serve people. And I know you've been a candidate before. Where do you think that's a tough sort of insider outsider relationship? Where do you think you really could be of maximum service? Do you think the positions you have now of sort of exercising people power kind of upon politicians versus being in a political position, do you have a thought on what that right balance is, or what you'd really like to do?
My thought is that, you know, politicians, it doesn't really matter. It's a bad thing to say as a guy who's run for office, and will do so again probably. I don't think it really matters who the politician is. What matters is our ability as people in the community to push them or inspire them to do the right thing. And my ideal situation is one in which there is a social movement, and I think we're all part of that, but where there's a social movement that can pull people up and kind of nurture leadership from within its ranks, and then bring those people into positions where they are the city council members or the state legislators or the state senators, et cetera. And that person could then be accountable to the movement. But conversely, if that person is not doing a good job, it should be able to hold them accountable, and if necessary, ask them to please step out of that role and let's find someone else who can do a good job. Because I guess I come from a sort of an operating philosophy that at the end of the day, it's really movements that shape history, and it's not like individual people. It's not. I don't have the great man theory of history. It's like George. There is Stokely Carmichael. I'm going to paint myself immediately as a lefty. Yeah. Stokely Carmichael has this great story which talks about how George Washington, if George Washington was in battle by himself, he would not have been successful. But it's because he's surrounded by these other individuals who together were able to accomplish their political goals. That ultimately they are successful. And so it's not individuals who do it. It's really the group.
Yeah. Now, did you? I mean, that's definitely something that comes, certainly from faiths of different kinds, but also from families. I guess I have a question a little bit about. Did you grow up here? Were you born and raised in Hawaii? Okay.
Yeah. I'm from Kaneohe, and my family's originally from the Big Island on the Hawaiian side, and then on my Filipino side from Ilocos Sur.
Okay. So I guess I'm wondering how much your life here in Hawaii has shaped that belief as well. Can you say some about that experience, or are they one and the same for you? Is there not really that much of a difference for you?
It's a good question. I don't have a control to test against, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But in particular, I think Hawaii politics is tricky because everyone sort of knows each other. And so there's a natural conservatism, frankly, with being in Hawaii, right? Where, you don't want to say something because so-and-so is, best friends with, their cousin, and, that we have all these interlocking relationships, which often result in us kind of not speaking out. And one of the hardest things for us to do is to, actually embrace those relationships, embrace those difficult conversations, and to say to someone that you are going to see again and again. You're going to see them at the grocery store. You're going to see them at the soccer game. You're going to see them at church. But to tell that person that, that person in power probably, this is why what you're doing is wrong, and this is what I think you should do. Please do this. And the other caveat that I think we need to remember in Hawaii politics is that governance and leadership is actually really difficult. I see Gloria Borland on the call, and Gloria is, we both have done a lot of work within like the Democratic Party, right? Which is this kind of weird organization where there's some people with a ton of power and a lot of people without. And it's really easy to look at someone like, like the governor, and say, Governor, how come you're not doing this? But what I always try to remember is that that's actually a really hard job to have. It's hard to be in a position where you have to balance the interests of all these different constituents, all these different interest groups, and try to maintain a sense of what is right, a sense of what is pono. And, not everyone will land on that same kind of balance, that internal balance, but, So leadership is hard. And I think one of the biggest tests is when confronted with a difficult decision, how do you land? How do you fare? How do you manage that stress? And yeah, it's not easy.
No, and you're really one of the more, I don't know, I'd say you're on the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Less conservative end of the spectrum. So is that a skill you've acquired over the years, or something you found, or did you have a mentor who was like, hey, this is how this gets done? Or is it just, you've just been in Hawaii long enough to know that's how it happens?
I'm an avid West Wing watcher, so that helps. I'm just kidding.
Don't joke. It's one of the reasons I'm a minister. Figured it's a lot easier with, I mean, ministry in a sense is easier to get into than politics and make a difference. So, yeah.
I mean, I just think a lot about, what would I do if I were in Governor Ige's shoes?
Mm-hmm.
I know it would be hard, right? He must deal with a lot of doubt, a lot of angry phone calls, and that's not easy. And so I appreciate where he's coming from. I appreciate where all these guys, what they're trying to do. I don't always agree. There's many times I don't agree, but I try to at least emote and kind of be empathetic to where people are and what they're coming from and what they're dealing with.
Good. Can you say a little about working with Local 5 at the Ala Moana Hotel? That's a sort of a specific organizer role in one. Can you just say something more about what you do there and how that works? What is it being at a union? Is furthering your cause or the work you want to do? So how did you get involved there, and what's your day-to-day like?
So I specifically asked for that assignment because, my experience as an organizer up to that point was as a community organizer, which is very different. And I wanted to understand, I guess I've always been really fascinated with the way that unions, and particularly in particular, really strong organizing unions like Local 5, the way that they operate, because I would always see them from the other side of the street. I remember several times I had called actions, and, some people would show up, and then I would look across the street literally, and I would see Local 5, and they would be disciplined and all wearing the same shirt. And what I've learned, since then is that, like, they are, or I should say, we have a really unique way, I think, of building power, building organization. And that's what I wanted to learn about. So I've treated my last several years with Local 5 as sort of like an internship, an internship for a 40-something-year-old guy. But it's because I've been fascinated with how does this kind of organizing work. And so my day-to-day is, I should say my job as in terms of my work on property is to identify who are the natural leaders within this group of, say, the valet workers or the bell desk workers. Who are the people that are natural, charismatic folks, the people that, they organize the smoke breaks, they organize the luncheons, the baby showers, the people who are natural leaders within the community of workers. And ideally, we would find folks who not only are social, they can get along with people, but they also have a courage to them. They have their own innate leadership, where they may have had to stand up to the boss at one time. They may have had to deal with a difficult situation in their personal life or in another organization. And so they have some history, some experience with having to step out of line, have to be a little bit confrontational, a little bit of someone with chutzpah. I don't know what the word is, but that's, to me, those are the people that I love everyone, but those people are really special because they are the ones who are able to build kind of organization within the workers, but I think also within our broader community. Those are the people that I look for. And And then we try to find opportunities to build strength and unity and cohesion within a group of workers. And so really that's my job, is just to find, like, what are the issues that people are concerned about? How do we build some committee, some kind of teamwork? Yeah. And frankly, I see it as an important thing for making the lives better for these workers, and like making their own lives better. It's not me doing something for them. It's them pushing and building their own power. A lot of times what we say is, when workers ask me as an organizer to do something, I say, no, you are the union, not me. You are the union. And you have to go figure it out. We have to do this together. It's not a service relationship. Yeah. But I think this is frankly the kind of thing that is going to save the world, is building power from the working class in particular. I think we can do a lot of good work, not just on worker issues, but on all kinds of issues, on general equality, on environment, on education, whatever the issue is.
So what are some of the things on the front burner right now for your folks at Local 5?
So, what we've seen over the last year, I guess, is it was a very profitable summer for our hotels, especially for the ownership of the hotels, which is not us. A lot of times, in fact, I think you can say this without any sort of equivocation, that the hotel industry in Hawaii is not owned by locals. It's owned by, multinational corporations. My hotel, Ala Moana, is owned by Accor, which is a company with headquarters in Singapore and Paris and Australia. I don't know, they're all over the place. It's a $9 billion company. And they have done very well during the summer. We've seen that occupancy rates in hotels were kind of like the same as last year. You would not have, or I'm sorry, the same as 2019. You wouldn't have known that there is a global pandemic with millions of deaths. The hotels were doing quite well. And, but they were very reluctant to bring back workers. We saw kind of a 20% gap between occupancy in the hotel rooms and re-employment of workers. And that 20% gap is, I don't know what dollar amount that represents, but it's a large sum, right? And then we've seen now kind of what's happened with that. We've allowed tourism to kind of continue unabated. COVID numbers have spiked, and now tourism has retreated a bit, but now we have a bunch of workers that are on unemployment, and it's coincided, unfortunately, with the ending of a lot of the federal plus up on the unemployment benefits. And so I think I saw a news story just a few days ago that said there were 35,000 workers who have essentially lost their unemployment benefits. And so one of our current demands, and this is what we were talking about today at the Capitol, and thank you, Reverend TJ, for coming out, is we want the legislatures to just reconvene and find money for workers, especially since, there's a lot of folks who have been saying that we need a shutdown. There is, for these workers, a de facto shutdown, right? They're out of work. There is no jobs. And one of the best ways to
or they're cutting down to, I'm sorry to interrupt, or they're getting cut, like my friends who are waiters are getting cut to like 1 or 2 shifts a week, which is almost worse, because then, not almost, but yeah, I mean, it's either not just unemployed, but kind of weirdly underemployed with promises of maybe getting more shifts so they don't get another job. And then, yeah. And,
and fundamentally, I think there's the immediate push, the immediate ask for the legislature to reconvene. But I think what we need to also do is try to reposition their entire economy. Like, we actually need to rethink what is economics in Hawaii. Tourism is a kind of plantation economy, right? You see the ownership is not here. The wages, unless you're in a union hotel job, are not a living wage. And how do we shift this? And I think a lot of us were hoping in 2020, which now seems like a long way away, that we were hoping that we would emerge from the pandemic with like a whole new thing, a whole new idea. And we did not get that done. And I think it's important to kind of hold some of our political leaders accountable for that, because they had an opportunity with the decisions that they made with the state budget, with all of the influx of federal monies that came in. It could have been an opportunity to, reallocate resources. And I feel like I lived all last year on Zoom calls with great conversations about better things we could be doing. The Civilian Conservation Corps to go and reforest the mountains and, rehabilitate our farms and bring back local food production. All these things which have not happened. And unfortunately, the pandemic is going to be around for a little bit longer. So we do have a new opportunity, I guess, which is the kind of that's the positive way of framing it. But, there's a series of hard decisions that we need to make about kind of the future of Hawaii. And they always say you should never never waste a good crisis or something like that. I forget what the wording is, but, we got to make sure that we don't lose this opportunity.
Yeah. So what are some of the projects that are going on? Like, as far as, looks like Lee's just putting a link in the chat. The newsletter that went out for Faith Action. This maybe comes into some of the work you're doing with Faith Action now, as president. I have the same friend calls me at the same time every Tuesday at 6:30. I don't know how to stop him. I tell him I'm busy, but it's like clockwork. I'd be worried if he didn't try to interrupt this project. But can you say something about now how this is interlinking with Faith Action and what you're asking people to do as far as reconvening or being in touch with legislators? We have folks on this call who spend a little time at home, so they might be able to pick up the phone. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. So right now we're asking for Faith Action members, and I'm going to just anoint you all as Faith Action members.
Just pitch it, man. Go.
Okay. So we want everyone to make phone calls to the legislators and to say, please reconvene. The teachers really need a lot of help, because right now the schools are not safe, and the teachers are frankly not being listened to by the elected officials. The governor has refused to bargain with the teachers union, which is a real problem. Okay, so there's that issue. There's the unemployment issue that we talked about just a few minutes ago. And what it really requires, I think, is for everyone to just call your legislator. And I don't know where you all live, but it's a really quick call. It's, hi, this is Ikaika. I'm asking for Representative Mizuno, that's my representative. John Mizuno, can you please ask the legislature to reconvene? Because we have all of these current, clear and present issues that we're dealing with regards to COVID and workers. And we just need you guys to get back in the building and make some good decisions for us. So, Nan and Marie and Wendy and Beth and Gloria and David and Junko, please make those calls. We would appreciate it.
Great. So yeah, I mean, this is it's kind of something I did when I first moved here. I learned a little bit about the power of unions in the history of Hawaii, in the 1970 essentially revolution, in the history of Hawaii. So is that part of, were you raised in a union family? Is like union something that you were always gravitated to, or is it more just something you've identified in life as you mentioned, like seeing the way they work and the way they operate? Is it something sort of that you learned, or something you came to, from?
Yeah, it's something that I've learned, and
Okay.
I've just sort of been studying. My parents are both teachers, and I think both of them in non-union schools. My dad was a teacher at St. Louis, and my mother was at Sacred Hearts, and she's now a boss. She's now management at Mid-Pacific Institute at the elementary. So I try to inoculate her against her own union.
Well, it's Hawaii. Sometimes you're playing, you get on both sides sometimes. So, well, that's good. And one of the things we're always kind of, I'm kind of curious about myself is, what are the things that a community like ours, so say our size or with our time or whatever, what is it you feel like really is the most pressing concern right now for in an organization, say that has a goal to try to accomplish something in a year or 18 months? Like, what are some of the things you're trying to get groups to focus on the most? You mentioned this work with the carbon, with something related to the environment as well. Is that something you're trying to get people to work on as well? Can you say something more about that?
So that one is a project it's a development project. For that one, it's less of a community organizer hat that I wear. It's more of a like an entrepreneur hat. We're building a facility on the Big Island of Hawaii, which it always sounds like Star Trek when I talk about it, but where
You're in the right place. Go ahead.
Okay, good. We're going to pull CO2. We're going to pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Like if you could just imagine us grabbing the molecules, we're going to pull the molecules out and then combine them with green hydrogen. So that's hydrogen from the splitting of water into oxygen and hydrogen, and take the hydrogen plus the carbon dioxide. Those go into what's called the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis unit. And then what comes out the other end is a drop-in replacement carbon neutral jet fuel. And the reason why I'm working on this is because aviation, especially long distance aviation, is something that we are all completely dependent on, right? We need to fly planes. In order to, do anything, to go on vacation, to visit grandkids, whatever. We need the planes, but aviation is one of the hardest things to decarbonize. We have electric cars, we can go vegan, there's all these things we can do to lower carbon emissions, but flying around is a really hard thing to do. And we anticipate that battery planes are going to come online pretty soon, but they're small and they're for short hops between Kauai and Oahu, which is a 15-minute plane ride. It takes longer to find parking at the airport than it is to fly to the other island, right? But for long distance flights, it's going to take decades, literally decades, before there's brand new technologies that can, fly us around on hydrogen or something. So we're building a commercial scale facility that it actually uses really old chemistry. The chemistry that we're using was invented in Germany in 1926, I think. But we're using sort of new machines that are able to do it using direct air capture of CO2. And then our long-term plan is maybe in 30 years, we're going to have hydrogen powered jets. That's the idea, hydrogen powered jets. At that point, because, if you look at the machines that we're using, and in fact, can I put a link in the chat?
Sure.
So it's Hawaii.federated.industries. It's going to be very exciting television for the future viewers to watch me typing into my computer.
Yeah, we'll edit that out too, don't worry.
You can click on that. There's some information about the project, but we're making a bunch of hydrogen and we're pulling down a bunch of CO2. Eventually, we'll be in a position to just take the hydrogen and power the future jets with the hydrogen, and then the CO2. Our plan is to bury it underground in the basalt rock formations in our islands. And one of the amazing things, so there's a project in Iceland that's doing this now. They're taking the CO2, and when you inject it into basalt, which is what all of our islands are made out of, it crystallizes into almost like a limestone, and it becomes a permanent way of sequestering carbon dioxide. Like it'll stay there forever. It becomes part of the rock. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, what I say in this website that we put up for Hawaii Federated Industries is our goal is actually to reverse climate change. I don't want to just adapt to it. I don't want to talk about that. I want to reverse it. I want to fix it. Because frankly, what I realized really bums me out, honestly, is that just in my own short lifetime, I was born in 1978. In 1978, the carbon parts per million was a livable environment. It was maybe higher than it was 100 years ago, but it was livable. There were trade winds when I was a kid. There was ice in the glaciers, And in just the 4 short decades that I've been around, we have dramatically increased the amount of carbon that's been emitted. I mean, I could probably spend my entire professional life just trying to take out the CO2 that went in while I was alive. And that doesn't even look at like all of the post-industrial carbon emissions, you know? And in fact, I think it was just since Al Gore's film came out, you know, in Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, I apologize if I'm giving an incorrect statistic, but it's something like we doubled the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere since the movie came out. And like, did everyone here see the movie? Yeah, right. We all saw the movie. We all saw the movie, and we saw, you know, that graph. Remember that graph that went up above the screen?
Yeah.
And it was the scariest thing. And then we all got into our cars and drove around. And like, you know, in my family, we bought, I don't know how many SUVs since we saw the movie, you know, and, you know, it's not like, it's one of these things where we all have a little bit of ownership, I think, of the problem, but we can also all be part of the solution, especially given that at the end of the day, this is a problem that was really brought upon by a handful of, you know, tycoons and executives and some junk political leaders, you know. Anyways, so that's my carbon related projects. Sorry, that was a long explanation.
No, that's fine. I mean, what I was kind of asking about, and what I prefaced it by is, you know, what's something that, so, and the reason I asked was, if you remember, was like, what's something that a group of people in a year or a year and a half can kind of set as a goal? But actually your answer brought up something I face a lot, and I think a lot of people do, and we've talked about in Pau Hana before, is an issue that's so big it makes my brain hurt response. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of psychologists who will even say that if you make a problem big enough, people just, it's no longer a problem. Because
climate is like that.
It doesn't hit the Velcro. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was talking, you know, you guys know, I don't know if you know John Kawamoto. He's a member of Faith Action, and he's a parishioner at Crossroads, Church of the Crossroads. He and I were talking this weekend, and his kind of analysis of it was that the climate crisis is like being in a very disastrous film, like it's a movie with, you know, it's a very scary movie, but it's moving very slow. and so you know, what we actually need to do is actually speed up the film. We need to get closer to the end of the movie, and hopefully by accelerating the conversation, we can actually arrive at some sort of resolution, which is good, you know, a better resolution. And, you know, it's a little pre-decision, but what I think we need to do, what I think that Faith Action needs to do, and I hope that we all can be part of this, is to do some civil disobedience, some nonviolent civil disobedience that sort of pushes the conversation past where it is now. Right now, the conversation it feels like what it was when I was a kid. In 1990, when I was in 6th grade, I remember reading an article about climate change. And the article said, we're talking that the governments of the world are talking about capping carbon emissions. It's very much like what they're thinking about doing right now, right? I mean, they've capped a little bit, but there hasn't been a lot of movement, right? It's these incremental pieces. And the thing is, we saw the wildfires. We see the wildfires right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to cry when I say this, but I was going to take our kids to go and see the redwood forests. And we decided we're not going to go because they may not be there. Like it's that crazy, like, you know. And so this is not something that we can like dilly-dally on. We actually need to move the political conversation to the point where the politicians, you know, politicians are always gauging their action based on what they think is politically possible. It's called the Overton window. And we need to move that window. We need to get the conversation to the point where where the politicians are willing to say, okay, yes, we need to stop all funding of fossil fuel production. We need to stop building any new coal plants, and we need to figure out how to turn them all off. We need to make it really easy for people to sell their current gas guzzler and buy an electric vehicle, or hopefully, not have to drive at all, because we've redesigned our cities so that we can walk from our house to our workplace, or to the daycare facility, or whatever it is. It's going to take a lot of work, but the sooner we do the work, the better off it is for all future generations. Like, to me, that's the benefit we need to be thinking about. It's not about us. I mean, I think about it as something for my kids, but it's really about all future kids. Like, the decisions that we make in the next 8 years and 3 months are the decisions that will affect all future generations on this planet. And I have a hard time talking about it without getting emotional, because it is so, like, the stakes are so high. And so, but in terms of the action that I think we need to take is, as people of faith, I think we need to make this an issue of faith. Like, there are future deaths that will be attributed to climate change. There have already been deaths because of climate change, but there will certainly be many more, for forever. And one thing that just came out of my conversation with John this past weekend is, how about we, as people of faith, organize a prayer vigil to bring attention to all of the future fatalities that will arrive because of the floods, the wildfires, the starvation, the droughts. We can trace it all back to the climate decisions that we're making, or that we're sort of not making right now. So that's one clear thing that I think that we should do, is in the next 6 weeks, organize a prayer vigil and do it someplace where it can be seen and videotaped, and make it clear that this is why we're doing it. We're owning the future. We need to own the impacts of the decisions that our current generations are making that will impact all the future. So I don't know, small thing. I also, if you are all are willing to make phone calls to the elected officials, that's great. 2022 is an election year. And I'm guessing that you're the kind of folks who vote. And it would be great if you could vote for people that will make the hard choices. And the other thing is that you all seem very reasonable. Very reasonable people. I could be wrong. Maybe you're not. But
I'm just checking who's here. Hang on. Yeah. These are reasonable people. Go ahead. Yeah. Continue.
I'm not a reasonable person. I'm not. And the thing is, it doesn't matter so much what I say. It really matters what you say. So if you guys, who are really nice, upstanding members of the community, if you're the ones saying, you know what, we have to stop the crazy things we're doing right now, we got to make a big change. If it's you who are saying those things to other reasonable people and to the people in charge, I think that would carry an incredible amount of weight. There's all these kids that I guess in 2018 and 2019 organized great big rallies at the Capitol. I don't know if you saw that. And the thing I thought of that, man, those kids, they really need our support. They need our back, because they can't even vote. You know what I mean? They can't even vote.
This church did try to change the voting age to 16. I will say,
that's right.
I testified a number of times on that. So yeah. Christopher Lee promised me a lot, but nothing happened, which is I've learned is not anything new for him. So no offense. Sorry, Christopher Lee. But
we have to. So I'm kind of in that boat. At this point in my life, I'm a property owner. I have 3 children. So I'm becoming more and more reasonable. But I think us reasonable people, I can't believe I'm including myself, we need to stand up for those voices that, they might be saying the same things as we're thinking, but they're not listened to. We need to back them up. We need to support the kids, and anyways.
So that brings me to something I always kind of ask people who are here in Hawaii is, what do you think Hawaii has a special place in this work, something to teach the world? And if so, what?
I think Hawaii is useful because we're basically a small planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have all of the good things and the bad things that a small planet has. We have an incredible, inequality. Like I know personally a couple of billionaires. I'm not showing off, but I know them. They're very nice people. And I also know a lot of people whose islands in the Marshall Islands have been literally destroyed or made completely uninhabitable because of military testing. I know those two groups of people. They both live on this island within like 3 miles of each other. That's the same sort of range and dynamic range that we see in it's emblematic of the global situation, right? And I think we got to think, okay, how do we solve things? How do we solve for that diversity within Hawaii? And hopefully we can have some learnings that we can then share with the broader global population. Yeah. That's kind of I'm not saying anything new, I'm certain.
Yeah.
But I think that's sort of our job. Like we're small enough where we can be sort of a test bed for big ideas,
Yeah.
Like the carbon sequestration project that I'm imagining is our goal is to sequester 1 million tons of CO2 per year. Okay. And just to put that in context, the total amount I think that the United States needs to sequester is 9 million tons per year. And Hawaii is not 1/9 the size of the United States, right? Hawaii is 1/300th or 400th the size of the United States. But I think that because of our unique size and the particular ways in which our economy works, we can have an outsized impact, I think, in terms of the global situation. One anecdote that I've heard, and I have no idea if this is true, is that the Costco in Iwilei at one point or for a while was the busiest Costco in the entire world. That's crazy, right? How could that be? In Iwilei, Ala Moana Shopping Center for a while was the biggest shopping center in the United States. How could that possibly be? But it is, or at least it was at one point, the truth.
Yeah,
Hawaii,
yeah. Go ahead.
Hawaii is weird.
Yeah. I mean, the Cheesecake Factory is the highest grossing cheesecake factory in the world, the one in Honolulu.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
The Hilton Hawaiian Village is in the top 10. Hilton Hawaiian Village is in the top 10 of Hilton properties in the whole planet.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I always say is that if you just take entertainment, you just take The Rock, Bruno Mars, Jack Johnson, and like if you talk just like the total number of people, Keanu Reeves. I mean, the amount of total like gross receipts just those three people represent. The highest earning musician, two of the highest earning actors in history are all from, and then when you look at NFL, four out of the starting quarterbacks went to high school here. I mean, it's the representation in so many different areas of the world is significantly outsized based on its size.
Yeah, sure. I'll text Bruno after this and tell him you got to do something for us.
Yeah, that's right. Well, his new visual album is absolutely stunning, so please tell him that as well. And if you all haven't seen it, it's breathtaking. I mean, it's overtly sexual, but so is all music. So you're welcome to everyone who checks out the visual album. It's beautiful. It's just gorgeous. Anyway, so one of the things I like to ask people before we head out, I have a 7 o'clock I do need to get ready for, but is, short term, I think you've already kind of answered it. What can we do to help your work? You've talked about calling our legislators, so you already got that one. Is there something else you'd like a community like us who's here and listening and who likes you very much? Is there something else, other projects you're working on that you need help with, or something we can do?
We have a live correction from Wikipedia. Ala Moana is the 9th largest shopping mall in the world and the largest open air shopping center in the world. Okay. In terms of current things that I'm working on, I would love for us to see the faith community in Hawaii being sort of get stronger, sort of like do some Pilates, in terms of being able to have a really strong core of people. And kind of I'll just be really kind of transparent with you. What I'm trying to think about in terms of faith action is how do we create opportunities for like, for instance, the group at Unitarian to organize and come together for a really clear action. So, all of these things that we've talked about, calling the legislators, doing a vigil, these are all opportunities for us to show our internal unity within our various parishes and hopefully within, our broader movement in general. So, I mean, if we can do those pieces, I think that would be wonderful.
Okay, well, all the liberal clergy are in my phone. So if you want to plan something together, like we all have a little text thread of that we never talk about congregants on, that we only talk about very important religious issues on. But we all have this thread. So whatever you need us to do, just get in touch.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Ikaika, for your time. Let them see it and hear it.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, our church, Beth, our church is a member of.
Thanks, Ikaika.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, what I like to do is kind of end the time here.